Hello and welcome to Alden Carrow's Poetry Podcast. I'm Alden Carrow, poet, walker and author of Cornwall in Verse, Tied to Touring Poetry. This is a podcast for people who suspect, as I do, that the world is moving too quickly and that something quietly extraordinary waits for anyone willing to slow down, listen closely and pay proper attention to it. In every episode, I share two poems. The first is a guest poem from the wider world of verse, something that has stayed with me, or troubled me, or refused to let me go. The second is one of my own, drawn from the moors, the coasts, the weather, and the strange beauty of ordinary days. And for your chance to win a signed copy of Cornwall in Verse, Tied to Touring Poetry, I invite you to suggest a future guest poem by emailing me at aldencarrow78@gmail.com. That's aldencarrow78@gmail.com. The next guest poem will come from one of you. My email address is in the episode description. Today, we are standing in the heart of the old Cornish mining country and asking what we owe to the people who laboured there. This is a place of brass bands and beam engines, of tin and copper drawn out of the deep earth by hands that paid a hard price for it. And the question underneath this episode is how we hold both of those things at once: the pride and the cost, the song and the silence beneath it. We begin in the 19th century with Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who heard the children working in the mines and the mills of industrial Britain and refused to let the country look away from them. And then we cross to the present day, to Camborne, once the beating heart of Cornish mining, a town whose wound will not quite heal and whose pride even now will not quite fade. Two poems about the same hard ground, one that counts what the work took and one that honours what it created. So pour something warm, settle in, the wind is up, the light is going, and there is poetry to be found. Before we come to my own poem, I want to put our theme plainly, because the whole episode rests on it. To honour the work, we must also remember what it cost. It's an easy thing to stand in an old mining town and feel only pride, the engineering, the courage, the brass bands, the sheer human achievement of pulling metal out of the deep earth. And that pride is real, and it is earned. But there were bodies underneath it. There were lungs that filled with dust and backs that broke, and, most unbearably, there were children too. Today's guest poem refuses to let us forget them. It is The Cry of the Children by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, published in 1843. You may know her husband, Robert Browning, featured on this podcast a few episodes ago, with his gentle, homesick, home thoughts from abroad. But Elizabeth was, in her own lifetime, the more famous of the two, and on the question of social conscience, she was the more powerful. She wrote this poem after reading the parliamentary reports into child labour in the mines and factories of industrial Britain. Reports that described children of 5 and 6 working underground in the dark, hauling coal, dying young. She was so moved and so angry that she turned the evidence into verse aimed directly at the conscience of the nation. It worked in the way that poetry sometimes can. The Cry of the Children became one of the most widely read protest poems of the Victorian age, and it added its weight to the slow, hard campaign that eventually drove children out of the mines. This is poetry as intervention, not decoration, not consolation, but a deliberate act aimed at changing how a country behaved. As I read these excerpts, listen for the terrible weariness in the children's voices. Barrett Browning's great insight is that the worst thing the work did to them was not the danger or the pain, but the way it stole their childhood, leaving them too tired to play, too tired to even weep. Here are some verses from the cry of the children. Do ye hear the children weeping, O my brothers? Hear the sorrow comes with years. They are leaning their young heads against their mothers, and that cannot stop their tears. The young lambs are bleating in the meadows, the young birds are chirping in the nests, the young fawns are playing with the shadows, the young flowers are blowing toward the west. But the young, young children, O my brothers, they are weeping bitterly. They are weeping in the playtime of the others, in the country of the free. True, say the children, it may happen that we die before our time. Little Alice died last year. Her grave is shapen like a snowball in the rime. We looked into the pit, prepared to take her. Was no room for any work in the close clay. From the sleep wherein she lieth, none will wake her, crying, Get up, little Alice, it is dead. If you listen by that grave, in sun and shower, with your ear down, little Alice never cries. Could we see her face? Be sure we should not know her, for the smile has time for growing in her eyes. And merry go her moments, lulled and stilled in the shroud by the kirk chime. It is good when it happens, say the children, that we die before our time. How long, they say, how long, O cruel nation, will you stand to move the world on a child's heart? Stifle down with a mailed heel its palpitation, and tread onward to your throne amid the mart. Our blood splashes upward, O our tyrants, and your purple shows your path. But the child's sob curseth deeper in the silence than the strong man in his wrath. 2 centuries later, those lines still hold their power and their accusation. The child's sob in the silence curses deeper than the strong man in his wrath. That is one of the great closing lines in all of English protest poetry. The quiet sob, she says, condemns more completely than any shout of anger ever could. What strikes me most is that Barrett Browning never lets us retreat into the comfort of distance. It would be easy to read a poem like this and think only of the past, of a barbarism we have left behind. But she is not only writing about children alone. She is writing about what happens when a society decides that some human beings are simply fuel, that their suffering is an acceptable price for someone else's profit. The iron wheels turn, and the children turn with them, and the men who own the wheels do not look down. That warning does not expire, it only changes its clothes. And yet, and this is the difficult turn the episode is built around, Barrett Browning gives us only one half of the truth. She gives us the cost in full and unbearable detail. What she does not give us, because it was not her purpose, is the other thing that was also true of those mining communities, the pride, the skill, the fierce dignity, the music. The St. Errands that broke their people also loved them and sang and built things that still stand. To write honestly about a place like Camborne, we have to hold Barrett Browning's grief in one hand and something else in the other. Which brings me to my own poem. My poem today is called Camborne. If Callington last week was the gentle face of Cornish mining, the orchards grown soft over the old workings, then Camborne is the thing itself undisguised. This was the capital of the Cornish mining world. This is the town of Richard Trevithick, who built the first high-pressure steam engine and ran the first passenger-carrying steam vehicle up Camborne Hill on Christmas Eve in 1801. This is the home of the Camborne School of Mines, whose engineers went out and sank shafts on every continent on Earth. When you stand in Camborne, you are standing in a place that genuinely changed the world, and that paid for it. I didn't want to write a poem that prettified that, but I confess that what I felt most strongly walking there was not grief. It was pride, a fierce, stubborn pride that the town itself seems to carry in its very stones. The beam engine still stands. The brass band still plays on the green. There is a defiance in Camborne, a refusal to be reduced to its own decline, and I wanted the poem to honour that defiance. So this is a poem of pride, deliberately, and I have left it to this episode, to the discussion that follows, to supply what the poem itself leaves out. Because the pride is only half the truth, and you have just heard the other half. Here is Camborne. The engine roared beneath the ground, where men chase fire without a sound. Tin dreams and copper veins ran deep, while granite walls refused to sleep. The beam house stands, a proud old frame, still whispering the miner's name, a town of brass and coal-black hands that shape the earth with bold demands. The brass band plays on village green, its echo fierce, its tone serene, a legacy in breath and brass of Camborne's soul that will not pass. Though minds have stilled and shafts are sealed, the heart of Camborne won't be healed. It beats in song, in steel, in law, a town that laboured, loved and bore. This brings us to our discussion for today, and it is the hardest and most important question I have put to you in this whole Cornish run. How does a poet write about labour and hardship, about a place built on the broken backs of working people, without either romanticising it or reducing it to nothing but misery? Because there are two easy lies available to anyone who writes about a working place, and they are opposite lies. The first is the lie of romance. It is the engine house photographed beautifully at sunset, the noble miner, the brass band, the heritage poster that turns a brutal industry into a warm feeling. This lie is seductive precisely because the pride is real. But when pride is all you show, you have turned other people's suffering into decoration. You have made the dust and the early graves into mood. My own poem, Camborne, leans towards this temptation, and I leant into it on purpose. But I would be telling you only half the truth if I left it there. The second lie is the opposite one. It is the lie of pure misery, the worker as nothing but a victim, the mining town as nothing but suffering. This lie is more respectable, and it feels more responsible, but it commits a different cruelty. It strips the people of everything that made them whole. It forgets that they had skill and pride and music and love. A man who spent his life underground was not only a victim of the mine, he was also, very often, a craftsman, a chapel singer, a father, a member of a band that played on the green on a Saturday. To reduce him to his suffering is its own kind of disrespect. The honest path runs between the two, and the technique for walking it is this: you must hold the pride and the cost in the same image, not in separate stanzas. Not a cheerful poem followed by a sad one, but single images that carry both truths at once. Look at the phrase in my poem, a town of brass and coal-black hands. The brass is in the band, the music, the joy. The coal-black hands are the labour and the damage. The same hands that played the cornet on Sunday were black with the work that would shorten the life attached to them. Joy and cost in one breath, in one image. That is the whole task. Or take the last word of the poem, bore. A town that laboured, loved and bore. Bore means endured nobly, with dignity. And bore also means was made to carry, a weight laid on people who did not choose it. I wanted that doubleness because it is the truth. The pride and the price are not two subjects. They are the same subject seen honestly. And here is where Elizabeth Barrett Browning becomes essential, because she reminds us that this is not only a question of craft, it is a question of responsibility. She did not write The Cry of the Children to be admired. She wrote it to stop something. When we write about other people's labour, we are writing about real suffering that real people underwent, often so that other people could grow rich. That places a duty on us, a duty of accuracy, a duty of respect. The miner is not a symbol. He was a man, a woman, a child. And the poet who reaches only for the picturesque ruin, the charming silhouette of the engine house, owes those people something better than to turn their hard life into a pretty view. So when I walk through a place like Camborne, I try to remember that I'm walking through both poems at once. Barrett Browning's children are there, underground, in the history of every shaft. And the brass band is there too, on the green, fierce and serene, refusing to let the town be reduced to its wounds. Both are true. The poet's job is not to choose between them, and not to heal the wound with a tidy ending. It is to keep both visible, the achievement and the price, so that the people who laboured are remembered as they actually were, whole, skilled, proud, damaged, human. And so we return to where we began. To honour the work, we must also remember what it cost. The heart of Camborne, as my poem says, will not be healed. And do not think it is the poet's job to heal it. It is the poet's job to keep it honest, to let the pride ring out, brass and fierce on the village green, while never letting us forget the coal-black hands that the brass was played by, or the children in Barrett Browning's mines who never lived to play anything at all. That is what it means to write about labour with respect, not to romanticise it, not to drown it in pity, but to carry the whole of it, the song and the silence beneath the song, forward into memory, where it belongs. And so we come to the end of another walk together. We have stood with Elizabeth Barrett Browning and heard the cry of the children worked to exhaustion in the mines and mills of industrial Britain, the cost of the work told without flinching. And we have stood in Camborne, once the beating heart of Cornish mining, where the brass band still plays and the town's proud heart will not be healed. Two poems about the same hard ground, one that counts what the work took, and one that honours what it built. And the quiet truth that runs between them, that to honour the work, we must also remember what it cost. So now, I would love to hear from you. If there is a poem you would like featured in a future episode, a classic, something modern, or a personal favourite you have carried with you for years, please email me at aldencarrow78@gmail.com. That's aldencarrow78@gmail.com. Every suggestion is entered into the draw for a signed copy of Cornwall in Verse, Titator in Poetry, which will be sent to you by hand. The book is also available to buy at Amazon. The next guest poem will come from one of you, And that is precisely how I want this podcast to work. Not as a monument behind glass, but as something living, passed hand to hand between people who still care to listen. So thank you for listening, for slowing down with me, and for being willing to hold the pride and the price of a place in the same hand, and to call that honesty. Until next time, may you find poetry waiting for you in the everyday, and I shall speak to you again on Wednesday.